Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values.
All right, Flyover family, you know our motto, wake up, speak up, and show up. And we say every single day, people were wanting Donald Trump to do 80 million things to save our country. The real answer is 80 million of us doing one thing each day to save our own country. And I cannot think of anybody that represents that model better, successful in business, actually has done something, actually has produced something, actually employed people, and kind of set that to the side a little bit to go and serve the people. And I'm so thankful that she has. She's actually transcended her own name. She actually goes by MTG.
Yay! Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
We're honored, Marjorie. Thanks for taking the time to stop by. We got a bunch of things I want to cover with you, but the first question would be, as you're on the internet, if you're on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, if you turn on 60 Minutes, about anything, people want to identify you, say who you are. They want to explain who you are. They want to explain what you're about. Fox News does it. CNN does it. 60 Minutes wants to do it. Late night talk show hosts want to define who you are. There's a lot of people, doing that. I'm assuming you worked that out pretty good on the inside in private before you ever became a public figure. But now you have a book. And I'd like to hear from you just quickly to kind of set the record straight a little bit, in a minute. Who is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and give you a chance to define it for yourself?
Well, thank you so much for that. That's the whole reason why I wrote this book, MTG, is because when I entered Congress in January of 2021, the mainstream media created a character of me that doesn't exist. And then they sold that character all over the country and all over the world. And so, it was time for me to tell people who I am, what my thoughts are, what my beliefs are. And I did that in my book, MTG. And I had a really good time doing it. So it's been a lot of fun. No, I was never in politics, actually. Ran a family construction company, raised my 3 kids, and only ran for Congress because I was mad at Republicans. We know who the Democrats are. They tell us every day. They actually follow through on all of their destructive policies. But for me, I was sick and tired of Republicans that make us promises on the campaign trail, but never follow through in actions. And so I ran for Congress fully believing President Trump would be in the White House. Mm-hmm. And it's been extremely difficult without him in Washington, as we all know, and we feel the consequences. But hopefully we get him back in 2024.
That is the goal, no doubt about it. I do have to ask you, though, I am so inspired by your pull-up game. And we have a little video here because I'm like, that is absolutely amazing. The last time I actually saw something like that from an incredible woman like yourself was in Terminator, because that was inspiring.
Yeah, I used to play that.
I did. I would play that over and over again. You have to talk about this because you've done some things with CrossFit as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Competed in sports my entire life and really used to enjoy triathlons and running and cycling events. Then a friend of mine talked me into trying CrossFit like way back in, I think it was 2007. Fell in love with it and started doing those crazy workouts. In 2013, I actually opened my own CrossFit gym as a second business and had a lot of fun doing that, competed in the sport, competed in CrossFit on a worldwide level and really went far with it. So it's a great workout. It's something I still do and enjoy to this day and try to stay fit and healthy. And I believe that's the right way to go about it.
I would just say hashtag goals. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I think it's the first thing I ever saw of you. It was a picture. It was actually a clip. It was on some social media. I think you were wearing a dress and you were doing them like the doorway of your office in DC. And I was, you're just scrolling stuff and you're like,
wow,
who's this? Because, it's the ultimate sort of, CrossFit's very fair.
Yeah.
If you can't do a double under, these kind of things, it's like you can't I deserve it. It's like, well, you better work on it. There's no deserve in CrossFit. Right. You kind of, everybody gets, scabbed up and has to kind of pay their way. And I think that's, it's kind of a good exercise for your mind and spirit for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the hardest workout you'll ever do in your life. And like you said, you can't cheat. Either you can do a pull up or you can't. And that's just the way it is. But it also made me mentally tough. I think that's part of my mental toughness. is actually, getting out there and competing in many sports in life. And that was one of the hardest ones. But also being a successful business owner, there are no bailouts. You either survive or you don't in the real world. And it's completely different than the government. The government, they just keep printing money, passing horrible bills, and somehow they just get to keep operating. And it's completely unfair. And Washington, D.C. literally exists to serve itself and itself only. And I'm so fed up with it. I'm really sick and tired of it. And here lately, I have been going off nonstop against many Republicans in my own conference.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to ask you about that. We'll play a clip here and get your reaction. One of your jobs, in D.C. is you're holding the Biden crime family accountable for their actions, but not everybody is on the same page. Lindsey Graham was on Meet the Press this weekend with Kristen Welker. Let's just play a quick comment from him and get your response.
Okay, let's turn to the other big story on Capitol Hill, the impeachment, of course, of impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Your colleague, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, said that he does not see any evidence, quote, that the president is guilty of anything. Do you agree with him? Is there any evidence so far?
I haven't really been paying that much attention to it. They have to prove that President Biden somehow financially benefited from the business enterprises of Hunter Biden. We'll see.
Have they done it yet, in your mind?
If there were a smoking gun, I think we'd be talking about it, but...
Crazy. All right, what's your response for that?
It's funny. I was just at Point USA in Arizona on Sunday, and I watched that very clip right before I walked out on stage. And I was like, well, there's my speech right there. So I walked out on stage and totally went off on Lindsey Graham. He's got to be an absolute blind fool. Either that or he's just serving the Democrat Party. And some of us are questioning if that's the case. He certainly serves Ukraine, and Zelensky is his favorite president of all of them. But Lindsey Graham's problem is he's not paying attention. If he wants a smoking gun, we've got plenty of evidence. I serve on the Oversight Committee, and we have actual checks written to Joe Biden that we've been able to produce through our very deep dive and investigation into the Biden family's corruption and crime. We have checks written to Joe Biden from his brother, James, and his sister-in-law, Sarah Biden. And we have totally tracked that money back to the CCP in China through the family's own bank statements. So you can't get any more stronger evidence than that, than actual checks. We have FBI 1023 forms outlining actual bribes from a Ukrainian oligarch that owned Burisma. We have so much evidence that Lindsey Graham should take a stroll from the Senate on over to the House side, and we'd be happy to go through the thousands and thousands of pages of evidence to prove to him that Joe Biden should be impeached. And I expect much better from the senator from South Carolina, and I'm sure South Carolinians expect much better from him as well.
It's been very disappointing, no doubt about it.
The rhino situation is the most frustrating things for the American people, because there's this feeling of okay, we're going to elect someone from among us to represent our best interests, and I'm going to, in the meantime, I'm going to run my business. I'm going to make sure my kids are safe. I'm going to make sure they're ready for their spelling test on Thursday. I'm going to, pay my taxes and mow my lawn. And I'm doing these things because I'm trusting this guy. He's voting. He's representing. He's losing sleep at night over the things my family is losing sleep over. And there's not a parent watching this that would go to bed at night with, the doors unlocked on their house, let alone the doors welded open on their home with their kids sleeping there. As a parent, you would care enough to shut them. So the kind of concerns that the people have within these people's districts, they don't seem to be reflected. I don't feel like Mitch McConnell goes to bed at night just anxiety over how can I represent the concerns of the people of Kentucky better? Like, what can I do to lay down my life to serve these guys to the best? I don't think anybody feels that with their elected officials anymore.
No, not really. And that's why I wrote my book, MTG, and I hope people get a copy at mtgbook.com, because you're absolutely right. That's why Mitch McConnell has a 6% approval rating. 6%. That's the worst approval rating out of any politician in history. In Congress, Congress only has a 13% approval rating. And I fully agree with the American people. I think 13% is actually too high. And, you know, people are sick and tired of Republicans that make these great claims and promises on the campaign trail. And then they go to Washington, D.C., and they don't even have the courage to impeach Secretary Mayorkas when I forced a vote on the House floor. They don't even have the courage to hold the Department of Justice accountable when it's tyrannically persecuting January 6th defendants, you know, the MAGA grandmas and the veterans who walked through open doors in the Capitol almost 3 years ago. And this is what we're so fed up with. But when you talk about locked doors and locked windows at night, our southern border is such a disaster. I serve on the Homeland Committee, and I can't tell you the overwhelming statistics and the stories that I've heard, but over 10 million people have come across our border. There's over 1.8 million gotaways. These are people from over 160 countries. They're terrorists, criminals, rapists, child sex predators, child sex traffickers, and we don't know where they are in our country. And I've come to a point right now where impeachment is not strong enough. I think that we need to start talking about treason, because this is exactly what this administration is guilty of, is treason, because they are willfully enabling the invasion of our southern border. And they set a record, I think it was yesterday, at over 11,000 people in one day came across.
Yeah.
And that was after setting other records on multiple days and multiple months. And so, you know, for Republicans in Congress to sit on their hands and do nothing about this is unforgivable. We have to get serious, and we have to get serious because if we want to be deserving of the votes that people give us, we need to work for the people and work for the country that we supposedly represent.
Yeah, it's true. You know, obviously, President Trump was very big on building the wall. And, you know, he was a very strong president, somebody we miss very much in this country. You know, and so obviously there's questions surrounding this next election in 2024. I'm
still wearing my Trump 2020 band.
We have not given up.
It's never come off. It's getting kind of old and stinky. But it's kind of, it keeps my focus a little bit.
It's true. But, you know, obviously Ron DeSantis is running, and Tucker and Tim Pool and Charlie Kirk over this last weekend were actually talking about Ron DeSantis. I want to play you something. I'd like to get your thoughts on that as well.
Can I just ask a question, since you all are so on the internet and like I'm not that much? You really get the sense that Ron DeSantis, who I liked as governor, the people who represent him online are the nastiest, the stupidest, and the most zero-sum people I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think that reflects him, but it's like, this is kind of small ball. And by the way, these purported conservatives, Ron DeSantis changed his view, and I like him, okay? I think he's been a good governor. I just want to be clear about that. I know him personally, I like him. But his donor, Ken Griffin, told him to change his view on Ukraine from it's a regional conflict we shouldn't get involved in to it's a super important thing, we should send more money. One donor got him to change his view, and all these so-called conservatives are supporting that like it's the most important thing ever. Like, who are these people, and what is their problem? Like, what is going on with them?
It does reflect on Ron, because Ron should have fired the people running his campaign a long time ago. Look, I respect that he wanted to launch his campaign on X, on Twitter Space at the time.
Agree.
And it failed miserably. This is a mistake. And now you've got, look, I know a lot of people groan, but a lot of people laugh. The high heels, you know, boots scandal. I mean, who's giving this guy advice, and why does he keep taking it? Because I will say it politically and policy-wise, we love Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
He's done an amazing job.
I agree.
But his campaign is a train wreck.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing that people like about you the most is you seem to have this like predetermined moral compass and plumb line. Like your policies and ideas aren't swayed day in, day out based on the crowds you're with, who you're talking to, what seems popular. You don't walk out of your house and kind of, you know, hey, was the wind blowing today? That's kind of how I feel. You know, it's predetermined. And the idea of a donor being able to swing somebody's policy view is kind of representative of what people are frustrated about when it comes to rhinos as a whole.
Oh, yeah, of course, 100%. Love those guys. Tucker, Charlie, Tim, all friends of mine that I talk to frequently. And I think they do a great job with their shows, just like you do with your show. And it's extremely important for Republicans to not be swayed by donors. And here's one thing I write about in my book is it's the lobbyists and the special interests in Washington that seem to hold the most power over politicians in Washington. And that's the one that absolutely disgusts me. And I'll explain it to you real quick like this is like when members of Congress or senators have to raise money for their campaigns, and you have to raise money. It's like running a business. It requires money to put ads on television, to reach your voters, mailers, the whole thing. So it is important. And the easiest way to raise money in Washington is when a group of lobbyists or a group, of executives from a local industry in Washington, D.C. hosts you a little get together, with some little sausages on a stick and some cocktails. And within an hour and a half, a politician can walk out of one of those little receptions with hundreds of thousands of dollars in their pocket to put in their campaigns. And so when it comes time for voting and the lobbyists come back knocking on the door and they're talking to your staff and they're saying, hey, we just wanted to make sure that, that line got in that spending bill. And we want to make sure that those federal contracts keep rolling for the military industrial base. And we want to make sure that Big Pharma is protected. They made those vaccines and we don't want them getting sued. When those things start rolling around, that's where the pressure comes on those members of Congress and those senators to say, oh, yeah, they did raise me a lot of money and help me get reelected. That's the biggest problem we have in Washington. So when there's one big donor that can sway Ron DeSantis to totally want to fund a failing war in Ukraine, a country that people can't even find on a map, a country that's not even a member of NATO, well, that is absolutely pathetic. And that's, the strong reference point that Tucker was making is because we're all fed up with Washington, D.C., serving every single foreign warring country across the world and forgetting that they actually represent the United States of America and we actually have a border and we should defend our border first before anybody else's border. But that's how politicians get bought off in Washington, is it's those magical little sausages on a stick and something about those cocktails. I don't know what it is, but it happens on a frequent basis.
Sad.
I love Thomas Massey. He the other day he even wears the debt clock on his jacket, which I think is hilarious. He's putting his, he's like this like really productive nerd mind, that's like, using it for good, like being able to use his MIT, stuff and having these kind of numbers. And people look at the debt that we're in and they look at the fact of he commented the other day that a year ago he made the comment, we spent more in Ukraine than we have on our infrastructure, roads, bridges, and so forth. And I think Newsweek or one of them kind of beat him up and fact checked it and come to find out he was right. Now it's double. It's twice as much that we've sent to Ukraine as what we've spent on our own bridges, roads, and infrastructure within our own country. Nobody could run a house this way.
Nope.
No, nobody can. Love Thomas Massey. He's a good friend of mine. He gave me one of his debt clocks.
Did he?
That's so cool.
He should sell them. I don't know if they're available. That's the coolest thing ever.
Oh, he does actually. He does sell them, or there's a family business that sells them. And it's an important thing to be reminded of. I actually tweeted out a picture from the U.S. debt clock today. We are quickly approaching 34 trillion. We're at 33.9 trillion, and that's a number that most of us can't even comprehend how much money that is. But the debt is outrageous, and the money just keeps getting spent in Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you something very important for 2024 that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. The current Trump tax cuts and savings plan that's in place, the current IRS code, expires at the end of 2024. So it's got one more year and it expires. Whichever party controls the House of Representatives and whichever party is in the White House in January of 2025 will be writing the tax code. And I can tell you right now, because I work with Democrats and I listen to them every day in Washington, they are not going to cut your taxes. They do not believe that there is a spending problem. As a matter of fact, they're going to raise people's taxes if they have control because they think it's a revenue problem in Washington, D.C., not a spending problem. So if that'll help people understand how important the 2024 election is, put it and think about your next tax bill that you'll have starting in January of
Huge.
2025.
That is
Well, Flyover
huge.
family, again, mtgbook.com. mtgbook.com is where you can get this. It'd be a great Christmas gift for somebody you like. It'd even be a better Christmas gift for somebody that you don't agree with politically. Just
they
be
can
like,
learn more.
Just be like, hey, read this and thank me later to your leftist sister or something like that. You know, just keep it light this year at Christmas. It would be a great thing. Let's move into, you mentioned 24. Let's move into that. We only had 5 weekends in 2023 that we were off, not home, that we weren't doing something at an event, doing something. We were in California this past weekend, and I showed this image because we were in, Devin Nunes area. We were in Tulare, California, near Bakersfield, Fresno, a lot of farmers and doers, there. And they felt like, Missouri, is what it felt like, out there. But I told them, I said, listen, they're really, look at this map, how red it is. We have no blue states. We have some blue cities, but there is no blue state in America. There's more registered Republicans in the state of California than any other state in the country. It's the number one dairy producing state. I mean, we have these stigmas of like, we can't win this battle and there's certain things are locked in, but you look at this map, we are a red country. Every state is red. There's just some blue cities. Let's talk about President Trump moving into 2024. Every weekend, we got a clip of him walking in with, like a gangster with Kid Rock and Tucker. He's in Nevada this last weekend, but a couple weekends ago, he's in Madison Square Garden. Like, New York City is all red. Man, Madison Square Garden,
They went crazy.
He walks into there like a conquering hero entering Rome, and the place blows up. I cannot wrap my head around the fact of there's just undeniable momentum like never before behind President Trump.
Oh, for sure. I love President Trump. I tell you what, I'm an unapologetic President Trump supporter, and he is the guy that we have to reelect in 2024 and put him back in the White House. That's the only way to save this country. But that right there shows how much people support President Trump. I just don't support. I don't trust our elections. I still don't trust them. And I tell you, I've been telling everyone I know, I even wrote a chapter about it in my book, is we have to have hope for the future, and we have to flood the polls. You have to get so many people out to vote. And, I'm frustrated. I'm mad at Republicans right now, but I'm still going to push everybody I can to vote, because you can't win sitting on the sidelines. And I think we got to flood the polls and overwhelm the system so that it's too many votes to, they can't steal it. And that's what we have to do. But don't count Democrats out. Don't count them out. They are going to work very hard in 2024, because the last man they want to be in the White House is President Donald J. Trump.
Which is why we need him there. That's why, I love DeSantis as a governor. There's incredible things. He's, his punchy back and forth with the press, was phenomenal. He's done great things. But everyone, Nikki Haley, all of them need to step aside, and we need to do we need all hands on deck, like our lives depend on it, because they probably do, to get behind President Trump. Show the Monmouth poll real quick. I want to get your comment on this. These numbers are ridiculous. I don't know if Biden's, what his plan is, if he's going to campaign from the basement again or go out and mumble around a little bit.
61% disapproval.
I can't believe he's still the Democratic, unquestioned nominee. I can't believe it's still gone on this long. But it within the Republican, I think it's 70% behind President Trump. It's never been this high in 20 years behind any candidate. There is so much winning going on. What do you predict with these numbers ending the year? We're ending 23, going into 24, and that's what the numbers look like right now.
Right. Well, they know they have a problem. They know they have a very big problem with Joe Biden. But they're not stepping away from him yet. We haven't seen that happen. So I think the future we'll just have to wait to see what they do. If they switch him out for someone else, I don't know if they will or won't do that. He's the perfect puppet. He's easy to control. He's bought and paid for by all the people they like, and they would love to just keep him in there and keep him injected full of medications to cover up his dementia, because that's actually the real issue. And we all know it. Everybody knows it. But as far as, Republican primary candidates, they all need to drop out, honestly. And Nikki Haley is a representative of the part of the Republican Party that all of us just want to go away. We are done with it, done with the foreign wars, done with the Washington establishment, done with the deep state. And she's basically like the worst version of Liz Cheney and George Bush you could possibly ever put together.
Well put.
So I hope she has. I've been calling very loudly. She has no place in a future Trump administration at all. We need to put her into retirement. And DeSantis is just losing. So it's pretty much over with. But I'm not sure what we'll see with Joe Biden going forward. Time will tell, though. We'll see what happens.
Marjorie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Flyover family, go to mtgbook.com. Grab one for yourself, but also gift it for somebody else. We really appreciate your time, Marjorie. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
This is a crazy time to be alive.
Well, just in our lifetime, used to be where you'd hear your grandparents talk about how cheap gas was and stuff, and it was 75 years before, 50 years before.
And so we've seen a lot of changes since Biden took office. $700 more a month
than what you needed in January of 21 when he took office.
You might hear these kind of things and think, oh, that's overwhelming. I can't control the government. I can't control what they're doing. I can't control the spending, but we can take care of ourselves.
You want to make sure that you're buying bullion from somebody that you can trust and someone that does not charge you a commission when you go to sell.
If there's gonna be a commission, have it on the front end, not the back end when it skyrockets and now you're like, oh my gosh, look at this big, huge commission I gotta pay because it's on the back end before I sell it.
You can buy an ounce of silver for $23. So this is something everybody can get into. And if silver goes to $50, if it goes to $75, if it goes to $100, all of those profits are yours. And that's happening while the dollar is buying less and less at the actual grocery store.
So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information. When you do that, someone from Dr. Kirk's team will get a hold of you to set up a free consultation. It doesn't cost you any money whatsoever. Or to do the same thing, you can just call 720-605-3900.
You know, we've been doing episodes with this guest for a year.
Wow, a little over
and a half,
maybe?
going through the Twitter feed. And I tell you what, she started her own podcast, and
it's blowing up.
It is just literally like slingshotted into the stratosphere. I want to play a little bump from last week's episode before we bring her on.
He's back. Owen Schroyer is out of prison, and he joins us to discuss why he was placed in solitary confinement. U.S. Capitol Police are opening satellite offices all around the country. There's even one office here in Florida. Why are they doing that? Well, I've gone around and I've asked, and you'll never guess who's hiding from me. The threat of a terrorist attack happening here on U.S. soil is hitting all-time highs. Sonia Labasco joins me tonight to discuss that. I spoke with TSA. You'll never guess what they said. Has Poland fallen? Well, they have a new prime minister, and he might be a supporter of open borders. EU Parliament member Dominic Tarzinski joins me to discuss. Does Biden's beef inflation have you feeling down? Well, we've got the solution for you. All that and more on the Breanna Morello Show.
Wow, such great information.
Man, a lot of the episodes, over 100,000 an episode right out of the gate. Incredible. Retweeted by Matt Gaetz. You had Owen Schroyer on right out of the gate, a EU Parliament member.
Just killing it.
Uncovering a lot of things before anyone in the mainstream by a couple of weeks, oftentimes before it is even out there. So anyway, it's been an honor. I don't know how long until she dumps us, and
She's like, see ya.
And is no longer going to have the time available to be a guest on the Flyover Conservative podcast. But she's former Fox News producer, Newsmax, Major League Baseball, executive producer for the Emerald Robbins Show, and the host of the Breanna Morello Show. Miss Breanna Morello.
Yay!
David and Stacey, always a pleasure. I always have time for the two of you, especially the two of you. Nobody else, but just you guys.
Thank you.
You know, there's always a hunch. You know, it's like even like the NFL draft. You see somebody and it's like, man, they're going to be great. You don't know how it's going to transition over. You always had the kind of the nose for what was happening, and that's why we've always gone through your Twitter feed, because it's always like the news before it's news. But your ability to grab these interviews and articulate things in a way that is so far ahead of what everyone else in this space is doing. Are you even shocked a little bit kind of how well this is being received?
Yeah, I mean, we joke about this, but normally you get like a sea of haters when you start doing things like this, and we really haven't received that. So yeah, I'm thankful for it. I know they're coming eventually, but I am super proud of how it's being received because I mean, there's not many people who want to discuss the things that we're talking about. You know, the corporate media tends to ignore these stories, and I remember sitting in those editorial meetings getting upset because I'd pitched stories that I thought were unique and important that for everyone to kind of know about, and I would get shot down. And so finally, I no longer get that gut feeling of just being so upset that my executives are not happy with me for pitching a certain story or for not for finding all this research on a story, and then them just telling me to stay away from that. So I'm excited. We have a platform now where there's no one shutting me down, and I'm extremely thankful for that.
Man, and you're not kidding. Well, the public, people are hungry for what you're sniffing out, and it's very obvious. In fact, let's just talk about a big story right now. Before I do that, though, I just want everybody to know BreannaMorello.com, BreannaMorello.com. You can find her Twitter from there. It can also take you to her Rumble channel. So that's a great way to be able to track her. Make sure you are following her on Twitter. Make sure you're also following her on Rumble and liking her videos.
You'll be smarter than all your friends at the water cooler
That's
and make
true.
you appear slightly more clever than you actually are, which is never a bad thing.
No, let's talk about a big story that you kind of been talking about for a while, and it just keeps getting
You poked it last week. It's getting bigger now, and I think it's continuing.
So you have U.S. Capitol Police are expanding outside of Washington, D.C. After January 6th, they opened 2 satellite offices in Tampa, Florida, and San Francisco, California. They just recently opened offices in Texas, Milwaukee, and Boston, too. USCP claim they're opening these offices due to the increased threat environment. When I asked USCP for the data that supports their claims, they couldn't get back to me on that. Why is Speaker Johnson allowing this to happen? Can Republican AGs push back on this? All right, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it seems crazy. The fact that Capitol Police would be operating outside of Washington, D.C. It was a question that I had, and this week we're going to ask FBI whistleblower Steve Friend that on my show because he's got the kind of understanding about how the federal and state governments are supposed to be operating. So he understands this complex issue and he breaks it down into simple forms for everyone. But I think it's so important, right? Why would Capitol Police be operating outside of Washington, D.C.? I actually just spoke with somebody who said, keep in mind, Breanna, you can't submit a FOIA request, a freedom of information request to U.S. Capitol Police because they're considered security for congressional members. And so they're immune to that. So potentially that could be one of the reasons why they're opening all these little field satellite offices around the country. I had no idea there was one in Texas, and I'm still trying to narrow down the location of that. But then we also learned there was another 2 that were supposed to be opening up this year as well. And so when you reach out to Capitol Police, they won't verify this information with you. They won't even speak to you about the issue. And I've tried reaching out to Speaker Mike Johnson's office. Obviously, he's newly elected, so he's probably got so much going on right now. And he really didn't ask for this position. But it should be a top priority for these congressional members, especially because, you know, Mike Johnson is a constitutional attorney. And so he knows that this shouldn't be happening and this is overreach. And so this should be a top priority for him. Now, Congressman Matt Gaetz was one of the few congressional members who stood up and said that this shouldn't be happening, especially in Tampa, Florida. And back in July of 2021, he did speak out against this. Also, we had Anthony Sabatini, who was a Florida lawmaker at the time, also try to propose legislation to stop this from happening here in Florida. And for some reason, even though we have the majority with Republicans here in Florida, Republicans weren't able to stop this from happening. And they shot down Sabatini's process of trying to ban these offices from opening up here in Tampa. So it's concerning, yes, but a lot of people don't want to do much about this. And that's what's really drawn my attention to the story.
Going through the comments on this tweet, it was kind of interesting because it was very one-sided. Most people are like, what in the world? Some will say they're operating as what would be a federal police force as an extension of the Democratic Party, you know, almost like in replace of the FBI on the investigation is kind of more of just straight up, you know, federal police. And then there's another guy that made a comment there that said, well, this is a stupid post. Don't you know that they have stations everywhere to protect Congress members from J6 activists? And it goes back 100 years that they have offices everywhere. So there's some misunderstanding on their role in the jurisdiction of the Capitol Police, I think, as a whole. While they do protect the Congress members, it's not a national. They don't travel with them internationally. They don't. It's not that kind of a role. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to get to that one you actually just cited, that comment that you just cited, because I thought it was really interesting. That individual, actually, when you do some research, the person looks like they're running an anonymous Twitter account, but they actually cite that they're a former Capitol Police officer. And then we had FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin, who also gets hate messages from this individual, and he looked at it and he says there's a lot of red flags about this person. So it could be maybe like a psyop, or like somebody who's trying to push back for the U.S. Capitol Police to make it seem like this is normal. But we know it's not. We know these offices started popping up just a couple of months after January 6th. They don't have arrest authority either outside of that. So what initially happens when I've spoken to people in Congress about this, what happens is if you threaten a member of Congress, that threat is then given to U.S. Capitol Police, which fill out all the information, gather all the evidence, and then they bring that over to the FBI. So the local field offices here in Florida, we have 3 of them here in Florida, would be the ones to take over and to handle those arrests and to handle the rest of the investigation. So I asked all 3 offices, I reached out to all 3 offices, and I specifically asked them, I called them and emailed them, and I specifically asked them, do they need U.S. Capitol Police here in Tampa? Like, what are they doing when they're working with you? Why can't they just email you from D.C.? And when they did respond back to me, the Tampa field office said, we don't want to really give you comment on this. Please go back to U.S. Capitol Police and ask them. And so you're not really getting much from these people. It seems like they're trying to be as vague as possible, and they don't want to give you the information. So I'm okay if somebody has some type of dispute to give me on this report. But the problem is nobody wants to tell me what the truth is anymore. And nobody wants to tell me if I'm wrong, what do you think I'm wrong in my reporting? I mean, they're literally getting these reports after I'm putting them out there. Even beforehand, last week before we ran the story, I reached out to both U.S. Capitol Police, the FBI, and the Speaker on Monday, and we ran that story on Thursday. So they had ample time to get back to me, and they chose not to intentionally. So there's a lot of question marks here.
That's interesting.
It's interesting. Mission creep always takes place in everything involving government. It's just interesting that they would be expanding an operation outside of D.C. when they were standing there open doors and giving tours on January 6th. They were more tour guides than they were actual police force on that day. So I think that'll continue to go up. All right, next one. This is kind of interesting. What were the consequences for those that attempted to hide the Nashville shooters manifesto? There were no consequences, meaning it's guaranteed to happen again and again. There also, I don't think, was any consequences or any pushback to even Steven Crowder for releasing this. He's saying on his show that, hey, they never even got a phone call or any real pushback on that either. So why was it suppressed, and what's the future of these kind of messages?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of question marks here as well, because like you said, David, why was it suppressed? Steven Crowder published part of the leaked manifesto. We still haven't seen the entire manifesto, and he's called for the entirety of it to be released. I know I've submitted a FOIA request again, looking for the manifesto. We'll see if they ever give it to us. I highly doubt it. But why are they hiding this? It looks like last week, local Metro Nashville police did say that their investigation is pretty much at a dead end, that they're not learning anything new, and they haven't really been able to get anywhere with this. And so the investigation looks like it's over for right now. But why are they so frustrated on the actual leaker rather than the reason for suppressing it in the first place? Not many people are asking those questions, and I think that's the big question here, right? We know that conservative Christians were the target of the shooter. We know that the shooter was a transgender, mentally ill person. And so to sit here and go back and forth, and I only say person, by the way, because I don't know what the original gender is. I think it was originally a girl who's pretending to be a man. But the reality of it is, and I'm not trying to be politically safe there, but the reality of it is we don't know why they're doing all this. I mean, the FBI, I've reached out to the FBI a couple of times on this, and they don't want to talk about it either. I think it's concerning because we know it's going to keep happening. There's no repercussions of this. If they could keep doing this, like, we still don't even know what the motive on the Vegas shooter was. Remember when the Vegas shooter opened fire on the country concert years ago, and we still don't know what the motive of that one was. We can only speculate. They seem to suppress this when it looks like conservatives are the victims here because it doesn't fit the narrative. And we really need some people to be pushing back against this stuff and getting the truth out there. Although Nashville police, if you recall, they actually suspended, I think it was 8 officers who they kind of were trying to figure out if they were a part of this or not. So there was really no repercussions for those who suppressed it. There's more repercussions for those who leaked it. And I think that's the interesting part in all of this.
Who's the person that should really be pushing that? Like, for that information? Like when you were saying, if it's not coming out, like should we be contacting our representatives or like what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you could try contacting the police department itself. They probably, not emergency line, of course. They probably won't really deal with that. The pressure needs to go. It needs to be felt by the politicians, because the politicians, if they get like 50 calls, they feel overwhelmed. And so if you call local governors, local AGs, state AGs, like those are the people who are going to actually do something about it. So I usually always direct people to that avenue. A lot of the times they're dismissive. I know here in Florida, we had people calling regarding the inquiry of a potential civil rights investigation into J6ers in the Department of Justice here and the mistreatments that have gone away. And when you call the AG's office, she'll tell you that her staffers will tell you that this isn't really under their scope, but we know it is. We know that they can launch civil rights investigations. It's just a matter of how they're going to maneuver it. If you keep applying pressure, they will eventually give in. And so that's my point. You could respectfully, and don't, a lot of people tend to call and get emotional and start yelling about it. You can respectfully call their offices and present it as an issue and say that when the election does come around, when each individual, whoever the person is you're calling, that this is something that's going to be a core issue for you on the deciding factor on who you're going to be supporting when it's the primary or the general election, whatever it is. But you need to make sure that you're driving that point home, because these people, they're politicians, but they don't want to lose their jobs. And so that's what you got to use against them.
Great point. Great point. All right. Talk about a politician and being reelected. I want to play this little video here because this is quite fascinating, and I loved your tweet. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Should be. I think if Joe Biden runs, I'll vote for him. He fumbles, but I felt like that hasn't made any impact on his ability to make decisions as a president. Is still perfectly capable. Have yet to see any big impact on his ability to be president.
So your response was, I'm willing to give up my right to vote if this prevents women like her from voting, repeal the 19th Amendment. That is hilarious. Oh my gosh, how could she be so confused?
I think she's sincere. I don't think she's confused. I think this is how she really believes.
Unbelievable.
These are the people that are destroying our country. When we talk about like why our country is in the place that it is because people vote on their emotions and they don't vote on their logic. And, if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, if I would have been an opponent of if I would have been, pro repealing, I guess it would be the 19th Amendment, I probably would have told you no, that I do have a right to vote. At this point, though, I mean, women aren't giving me much in the way of hope these days. I wouldn't really argue against repealing the 19th Amendment these days, because although I want to be able to vote, I know that she's way more dangerous than whatever I could do with my ballot. So maybe we should actually talk about this seriously.
Oh my God!
Oh, and I think she was sincere.
Wow.
Which is,
I think she was.
Which
I think
is
you're right.
More interesting. All right, language is a big deal. Talk about the media and their narrative. On the last piece we just talked about with the Nashville manifesto, the media celebrates the death of Ashley Babbitt. The mainstream media celebrates the burning of a police station in Minneapolis, where they abandon it, like the fall of Saigon. Their language is so surgically accurate as a reflection of where they stand. They're not the mainstream media does not go out of their way to, hey, here's the facts, here's a cup, let's talk about what's in it. Every single thing is geared to direct the way you think, as they pretend to be feeding you facts. And it's really laid out well in this next tweet. The word allegedly, it is so manipulated in cases. It says allegedly, we have it on video. This is why people can't trust the corporate media. NBC News, Senate staffer alleged by conservative outlets to have had sex in a hearing room is no longer employed. So that means this came out long after the person had already been fired. And it was just alleged. It was alleged by a bunch of right-wing wackos that this person did that. Let's forget about the actual. It wasn't like a secret camera caught him. They made a movie. They were trying to make a film.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's disturbing. It's disgusting. I'd highly recommend our audience not going to look at it if you haven't seen it already. Save yourself. But the reality of it is, we know that this person is the person who is accused. I mean, I always wait first off, because as many of you know, defamation lawsuits, they're hard to prove, but when they do get their hands on a good one, they are, as you saw through Giuliani, and I don't think Rudy was wrong, but when they can, they throw the book at you. And I think it's $146 million what they're demanding he pay up now. And he just got hit with a second lawsuit on Tuesday as well. So we know that I tend to use allegedly at times where there's might be a 1% doubt, But you don't use allegedly in that type of headline because, number one, we've got the video. We know it's this person. This person isn't denying it. And the senator's office fired the person because of this sex tape. And so where the heck are you getting the allegedly from? Mm-hmm. It's why so many people are so hesitant to trust the corporate media nowadays.
Sure.
But the reality of it is they're right. You can't trust these people.
Right.
They will sit there and pretend like this isn't happening when we've all got two eyes. We know it's happening. And this person didn't even want to hide from the camera. I mean, literally, when you look at the 4-second clip that was posted by the Daily Caller, he's looking right at the camera. He turns around and looks at the camera. And so although they blurred out his face, the Daily Caller confirms this is the person. So I don't know how much more we need to, and they didn't really do a great job of blurring out the face. You could tell it's him.
Right. Or any place else. That was so bad.
So
that
gross.
was bad.
I don't want to go ever testify before
No, definitely
Congress again. Bring your Clorox wipes.
Yeah.
Imagine being
the
a senator who
Capitol.
has to go back and sit back in that seat. That's pretty disgusting. I think it's Klobuchar actually who has to sit back. That's her seat.
That's just terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
All right, wrapping up strong here.
All right,
at the
last
border.
one. So border, let's talk about the border. Breaking video from a contact on the ground in Eagle Pass, Texas right now shows a mass of thousands of migrants waiting to be processed by Border Patrol after they crossed illegally today. I've spent hundreds of days there over the past 2+ years, and I've never seen it like this before. The video it's crazy. Yeah, Avery's showing it there. And you say, our beautiful country is being invaded by foreigners that hate us. And it's just, Charlie Kirk actually
Just kind of build on top of that, then we'll get your comment here.
So he was saying, what in the fresh hell is this? 10 IEDs have been found at the U.S.-Mexico border, 1,200 mostly military-aged men every day crossing with deadly fentanyl. Chinese nations crossing in large pods, hundreds of terrorist gotaways. We are being invaded by a foreign force.
Let's play that clip that he shared there from Fox real quick.
Officials are warning agents to watch out for IEDs, improvised explosive devices. This now, according to an internal memo obtained by Fox Business, says the Mexican military seized 10 explosives at the border. The memo reads in part, quote, agents should exercise extreme caution and should report any possible armed subjects approaching the border with possible explosive devices.
All right, Breanna, break this down for us, and we'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I mean, listen, I think we're about to see something that's going to be really bad for this country. I don't know if we have months or we have years, but it seems like there's going to be a war fought on our land at this point. I mean, these people who are coming into our country, they come from countries that hate us, and they're all young men of military age. And we know this because great reporters like Michael Yon, who are down there at the Panama Canal area, Darien Gap, they are sitting here watching these people flood in, and then you see them arrive at our border and they're overwhelming Border Patrol. But there's a reason why they're doing so. It's because then Border Patrol can't vet them properly. And then we also see that they're being put on planes and shipped all across our country. And yes, they probably do have IEDs on them because they're getting ready to start a war. We don't know if those IEDs are being shipped directly to the United States, and they're maybe leaving them in discrete areas for members of whatever these people are a part of to go and collect. But Michael Yon literally has a member of, we'll go with the Chinese spy, who openly admits on video that he is here. He's a member of their military, and he is breaking into the United States. Again, he tried it once, he's going to try it again, and he's looking to be in the United States. And he's able to fake it without having any accents. You wouldn't even know that he is Chinese. So yeah, it's quite concerning. We're about to be in a really bad situation, and the United States government is intentionally setting us up to be in a really dangerous situation.
Okay, Flyover family, go to BreannaMorello.com. Her show is phenomenal, truly. I think you're up it from once a week to twice a week, and maybe even more as we go forward. But it's great content, and you do the work in private to put this show out in public. You really do the research, and it's must watch TV. So BreannaMorello.com, and again, Twitter is a follower thing as well. Man, 150-some thousand followers
Crushing
there,
it.
and you are truly putting your thumb on the pulse of what's happening, and I think it's an incredible thing.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Breanna. We appreciate it.
Mom?
Well, Wesley and I got all in the Christmas spirit after decorating, and we decided to make a naughty and nice list. And I have to say, Avery, you're doing quite well.
Really?
So we're trying to decide who all we're going to buy MyPillow stuff for Christmas. You know, if you use promo code FLYOVER, you get up to 66% off when you go to MyPillow.com.
That's a great deal.
Can't beat it.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Promo code FLYOVER.
You know what time it is. It's time for an economic update with Dr. Kirk Elliott. Yay! Welcome.
Oh, it's so good to be back with you again.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. So we've been talking about how crazy it is right now in the world, and but just because it's crazy in the world doesn't mean it has to be crazy in our world.
Yep. We can make good choices.
Well, we have to make good choices, and who's not making good choices is everybody in government. Like
True.
All of them. It's like good grief. But we had touched on this earlier in the week a little bit, but I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper. So when Chairman Powell, chairman of the Fed, decided he's going to just pause rates for a bit and then bragged about how next year they're going to lower them, right? So we talked about that, but what that causes is what Alan Greenspan, Federal Reserve Chair from way back in the 80s, said this is irrational exuberance, right? So when people think, it doesn't have to be real, it's perception, that they think moving forward, the economy is going to be robust. They've won this battle on inflation. They can lower rates next year, all political speak that helps the president. But what did he actually say right after that? He said, he welcomes the progress that they've made on inflation, but there's still a lot of work to be done, right? So they haven't won a war on anything, right? They just say things, right, to make people think that they're doing the right thing. Now, but what that does is it causes stock market to go up. It caused gold and silver to go up. These expectations, just these comments. See, but in time, fundamentals always reign supreme, right? So the bond market and gold and silver, they're very smart markets because gold and silver, like silver especially, has to do with manufacturing. Like your big, huge companies that manufacture, like Sony, Samsung, LG, Tesla, all these electronics manufacturers, they're going to be smart about the price that they're buying with these different futures contracts and what are they going to lock in now because they know how much production, how many cars they have to make or whatever. The bond market has insurance companies, pension, real estate. I mean, they're a very sophisticated market too because the interest rates rule the whole world with all the debt that we have. Stock market investors, I'm not saying that they're dumb, but the market is not as savvy as the bond market and the metals markets because they respond to stupid sound bites on financial news networks like, we got to go buy that Google stock because it's amazing and the profits are going to be intense and blah, blah, blah. It's like it's like, we got to go buy Google stock as Jim Cramer just said to do it. It's like, did you do any research behind that comment? Do you know why you should do that, right? So stock market investing is almost always just knee-jerk reaction to a soundbite, where the other ones are not, right? So here's where the manufacturing demand behind silver is about to go through the roof. So here's why. So fuel cells use a lot of platinum in them, like all these electric vehicles and everything that we're seeing, right? So these batteries use a lot of platinum. Platinum's $1,000 an ounce. They've just figured out a way to replace platinum with silver in fuel cells. Silver's $25 an ounce. So if you're a manufacturer, would you want to spend, if you can use an equivalent product, would you want to spend $1,000 an ounce for it or $25?
25,
right?
Of course.
Because in a horrible world where inflation is persisting and every manufacturer is trying to beat their competition, offer something for less expensive, boy, that does it. But it's not just a little bit, it's a lot of it or cheaper, right? So the estimates are this one thing could increase the demand for silver by 10x, right? So imagine where we could see silver moving forward, right? And we've all talked to like our good friends like Bo Polney before that has seen projecting real massive numbers for silver. And it's like, I'll just stick with 75 to 100 because that's tripling to quadrupling where it is today. But, there's, and he's not the only one who have algorithms that say, well, silver could be $600 to $2,500 an ounce. This technology, basically using silver instead of platinum in fuel cells, which, boy, the green energy environmental movement is pushing everybody away from petroleum-based products to electric vehicles, to solar power, all this stuff.
Right.
The demand for silver could go through the roof, right? So here you've got statements that say we haven't, we welcome the progress we've made on inflation, but we still have a lot to go. Well, then don't say that you're going to lower rates 3 times next year, because that tells us that you've actually won the battle. They haven't, right? They actually haven't won the battle. So you're looking at those kind of statements, and it's like, what's real and what's not? What's truth and what's lies? So in the world of politics, in the world of an election year, just assume everything's a lie. I mean, literally, because people will say stuff to get votes, right? So I think those statements are going to be very good for Biden, even though Biden's statements on the economy, his progress on the economy, what he's doing is not good on the economy. Bidenomics absolutely stinks. People aren't working, wages are coming down, inflation is going up. And so moving forward, I think 2024 is going to be a knockdown, drag out year politically like nothing we've ever seen.
Yeah.
The lies coming out of politicians are going to be extreme to get people's votes. And behind the scenes, if you use wisdom and knowledge and discernment that God gives us, you can start to decipher some of these things and realize perception might be reality in a lot of these markets, but ultimately reality is reality. Right. So ultimately the perception wears off, right? It's like I hate to use the term, but like the beer goggles wear off, right? And you just see something that's a little bit different than what you saw before. That's going to start to happen in 2024 as the world realizes the emperor has no clothes. We have no idea where all this inflation came from. Biden was telling us a whole nother story, but in reality, it's different. That truth will be exposed. The lies will be exposed. The truth will prevail. And those that have tangible assets will actually protect and preserve their retirements moving forward.
That's huge. And when you talk about tangible assets, so let's say that somebody's new to the show, they haven't heard us speak before. Can you describe again what a tangible asset is and why is that important?
Yeah, it's a thing. So anything that's a thing is tangible, right? You can touch it, you can feel it, it's tangible, right? So like silver or gold, for example, you can invest in silver or gold bars or coins, or you could invest in a futures contract or an ETF or mining share. Those aren't tangible. Those are pieces of paper that are a proxy for the actual tangible thing, right? So never invest in the thing that's tracking something. Invest in the thing, which would be gold or silver, the tangible asset. That's what I'm talking about, because ultimately, if you're a manufacturer and you need silver for electronics, you're not going to go, if you're Sony, for example, you're not going to go and buy a silver ETF piece of paper. You can't manufacture anything with that. It's just like you need the actual physical silver to melt down and make into electronic circuitry. The paper does you no good. The tangible asset does. So ultimately, that's the function of supply and demand, which is why for safety, for asset preservation, for growth, always invest in the tangible asset.
That is really great advice. So Flyover family, you can go to flyovergold.com. It's a landing place that you can fill out your information. Yeah. When you do that, it's going to put you in the queue for somebody to get a hold of you for a free consultation. It doesn't cost you any money at all. Just to kind of get your questions answered, find out what your options are. You can also call 720-605-3900. Again, it's 720-605-3900. We just don't know what this year's going to hold.
And you want to make wise choices as you do this as well, that you're not paying undue commissions when you're making this move, that you're not buying stories, of we were at an event this last weekend, and there was somebody that was selling, collectible, things like this. And I bought a really cool Trump coin. It's not an investment. I bought it because it was cool looking. It
had a great story.
My cost per ounce was way over the cost per ounce on a spot price, what I would buy as an investment through you. And I knew that going in. You can get tricked into, making your whole investment into a collectible or a story, or what is behind something. If it's Elvis coin or whatever it is, it's irrelevant. So these guys protect you. When you guys are working with Dr. Kirk and his team, they protect you from buying something that is an inflated price over what it's actually worth. So you're buying it for less than you'll sell it for in the future, which is kind of the point. But you can lose track of that, and you're not buying something that's projected like, hey, a million years from now, this will be worth a lot. It's the ounces that something costs. So there's a lot of ins and outs that I encourage you to call Dr. Kirk and his team, because they can protect you as you weave your way through this, that you're getting the highest number of ounces of silver for the amount that you're spending. It's critical.
Such a great point. Dr. Kirk, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. We'll talk to you again soon.
There's not one thing that you can buy at a grocery store today for $1.
And it feels like a scary time, but it doesn't have to be scary for us. We may not be able to control the government or what they're doing with our spending or what happens with inflation, but we can control what we do.
This is 1 ounce of silver, but you might have bought a 1 ounce silver that, you paid $80 for it because it had a picture of Elvis on it. It doesn't matter what's on it. This is worth the spot price of silver that day. And so it's important that you're buying silver and not stories. And number two, that you're buying it from a broker that does not charge you a commission when you go to sell it. And so I know when I go to sell it, I don't want to pay a commission based on the increase. I only want to pay a commission based on the purchase of it that day. So when I go to sell it, all of that profit belongs to our family. We've known Kirk for over 25 years. His dad was a mentor of ours when we were first married. It's a family that I completely trust.
For you to be able to connect with him, all you have to do is go to flyovergold.com. There's a place you can fill out your information. Someone from Dr. Kirk's team will give you a call to set up an appointment to help to answer your questions. It doesn't cost you any money whatsoever. Or you can call 720-605-3900.
I am so glad that we did. Do it today. You'll be glad you did.
The only channel dedicated exclusively to world entertainment. I'm your host, Breanna Morello. My journey into conservative media is quite unique. I was raised in Huntington, New York with my 6 siblings. My mom stayed at home and raised us all while my father worked. After graduating school, I landed in the sports world. I was a freelance reporter and a producer for several outlets. I worked for companies like Major League Baseball, NHL, ESPN+, and many others. But it wasn't until a couple of years in the sports world I realized it just wasn't for me. So I made the jump into the news industry. My first gig was at Fox News and Fox Business. I was a teleprompter operator. And although they say it's an entry-level position, it was extremely high pressure environment.
You stay classy, San Diego. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
After spending a year over at Fox, I decided New York wasn't for me. So I picked up all my belongings and drove all the way down to South Florida. I moved to West Palm Beach before anyone else did. And then during my time in West Palm Beach, I landed at a local news station down here. I was so tired of having to just copy and paste over scripts from platforms like the Associated Press and other platforms where you just don't put thought process into it and there's somebody else who's generating a script for your anchor. So then I ended up landing at Newsmax.
I think Bloomberg has a really tough situation he's going through right now.
After spending quite some time over at Newsmax, I did head back to Fox. I started working for Maria Bartiromo as a booking producer for her Fox Business weekend show, as well as Wall Street Journal at large. After finding out that Fox wanted me to comply with the local New York City vaccine mandate, I resigned. But I am extremely grateful because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have landed my first gig in independent journalism with Emerald Robinson. We launched The Absolute Truth on Lindell TV and it's been absolutely incredible.
Our very own senior producer here at The Absolute Truth for her show debut,
Breanna Morello. I am now a firm believer in independent journalism and strongly believe that will save our country. So I'm honored to be on this independent platform and bring you the stories you won't see anywhere else. Join me in my journey on The Breanna Morello Show here on Rumble.
Have you ever wondered about ancient civilizations or the moon landing, chemtrails, the Nephilim, demons? Those are all things that fascinate me. Decided to use our platform of the Flyover Conservative podcast and create a new show called Conspiracy Conversations. Every Saturday morning, we get together with some of the brightest minds in the world that have spent thousands of hours on a topic, churning through the research, looking at things. They've traveled, they've been to the locations, they're looking for the truth because they're as curious as you and I are about what's true. What is really true about our past, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going? We don't bring on guests to iron out their wrinkles and find out the things that we disagree on. No more than I go to the grocery store and try to put everything in the whole store in my cart. I just try to walk out with better ideas than I had when I walked in. If you got something inside you that's like, what about that? I don't even know if I agree, but I would like to hear them out. If you have an open mind and a curious heart, we've got a show for you every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, conspiracyconversations.com.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Flyover Conservatives podcast with David and Stacey Whited. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment below. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's podcast, share with those who came to mind. Be blessed and make it a great day.